What's the single most terrifying creature in the history of horror movies? Is it an angry ghost? A hideous-looking alien from another planet? Maybe a masked killer lurking in the shadows with a chainsaw? Actually, it's something a lot more familiar. Something that might just be curled up next to you, on your lap. You've seen this in movies a million times. The tension is thick enough to cut with a machete, then there's a sudden noise, and then what was that? Oh, it's just the cat. But what if I told you that this isn't just a cheap trick? What if it's a carefully engineered cinematic tool, born in the 1940s, and designed specifically to hijack your deepest fears? This is the story of how Hollywood turned the common house cat into a weapon, and, in the process, changed how we see our favorite pets forever. Before we get started, consider subscribing to our pet-loving community for more insights about pets, myths, and media, and how scary movies have created a menacing presence in horror forever, cementing a cat as the perfect way to terrify us. To figure out how your fluffy companion suddenly became a movie monster, we have to rewind to 1942. Back then, horror was all about Universal's very visible monsters: Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. But a rival studio, RKO Pictures, brought in a producer named Val Lewton to create a series of low-budget horror flicks. The first one had a title that absolutely screamed B-movie, called Cat People. The film is about Irina, a Serbian immigrant who's convinced she comes from a cursed bloodline of people who turn into panthers whenever they get angry or passionate. But Lewton was working with a shoestring budget, so he couldn't afford some big, dramatic transformation scene. Instead, he and director Jacques Tourneur had to rely on something way more powerful: the audience's imagination. They used shadows, light, and sound to suggest a threat that was always just off-screen. This creative limitation led to a truly revolutionary moment in film history. In one legendary scene, a woman named Alice is walking home alone down a dark, empty street. She's terrified that Irina is stalking her, and the only sound is the click-clack of her heels. But then, she hears other footsteps, seemingly getting closer and closer. The tension builds to an almost unbearable point, and then a deafening cat-like hiss shatters the silence just as a massive shape lunges into the frame. But it's not a panther. Instead, it's a bus, and the hiss is just its air brakes. This was the birth of the modern jump scare. It was so influential, it was nicknamed the Lewton Bus. It's a technique where unbearable suspense is violently shattered by something that turns out to be completely harmless. And while this first one didn't even use a real cat, it created the blueprint for horror movies going forward. Lewton proved you could scare an audience by making them expect a monster and giving them a bus. Or, as directors would quickly discover, an unsuspecting cat. How many times have you seen this technique used in movies? Tell us about it in the comments. So why did the Lewton Bus turn into the ultimate cat scare? Why not a dog, a bird, or a raccoon? Well, it's because from a filmmaker's perspective, the house cat is the perfect biological weapon for a heart-pounding jump scare. First, let's talk about how they're built and their demeanor. Cats are natural stealth predators. They move in complete silence and are masters of lurking in the exact places horror movies love: dark closets, cramped cabinets, and long, shadowy hallways. Their ability to make sudden, lightning-fast movements and let out a sharp, guttural hiss is inherently jarring. A dog might give you a warning growl first. However, a cat can go from being dead silent to a startling explosion of noise and motion in less than a second. This taps directly into our primal fight-or-flight response. A director spends minutes building tension, putting our senses on high alert. The fear center of your brain is already primed and waiting for danger. So when the cat suddenly bursts out, it triggers a huge adrenaline spike and a startle reflex before your conscious brain can even figure out what's happening. You jump first, and then you feel that wave of relief when you realize it's harmless. It's that rhythm of tension and release that makes the scare so effective, and clearly it's pure psychological manipulation. Filmmakers in the 70s and 80s got this down to a science. Take the movie Alien again. After the infamous chestburster scene, the crew and the audience are terrified of what's now lurking on the ship. Now every shadow could be hiding the creature. So when Dallas is crawling through the claustrophobic vents, the tension is suffocating. And then Jonesy the cat pops out. You jump, you let out a nervous laugh, and for just a second, you feel safe. The filmmakers have just reset your fearometer, making you even more helpless for the real scare they have waiting for you in the next scene. The cat scare quickly became an essential tool for horror directors, mostly as a red herring. It's classic misdirection. You're wound up tight, waiting for the killer to appear, and the cat's sudden entrance acts as a false alarm. It's the movie's way of winking at the audience, saying, "Not yet, but it's coming soon." It's a game the film plays with us, acknowledging our expectations just to toy with them. By the 1980s, this trope was so common it was practically a cliché. It felt like every slasher movie had that one moment where the final girl is hiding in a closet, hears a suspicious noise, throws open the door, and, oh, it's just the cat. It became a predictable but weirdly comforting part of the terrifying horror experience. It gives us a quick breather for a sec and maybe a little dark humor before plunging us right back into full-blown dread. But the horror movie cat isn't just a furry object to throw into the frame. It carries centuries of symbolic meaning that makes its presence far more unnerving. And speaking of unsettling, if you're enjoying this deep dive into the dark corners of cinema, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're always dissecting the tricks filmmakers use to mess with our minds, and you won't want to miss what we uncover next. Do you have any topics we could dissect? Let us know in the comments. Why is the cat scare so effective? The reason the cat scare works so deeply isn't just biology, it's cultural. For centuries, cats have held a strange and mysterious place in our collective psyche. In ancient Egypt, they were worshipped as gods. But in medieval Europe, they became tangled up with witches and the devil, seen as supernatural familiars and agents of pure evil. Black cats, especially, became the walking symbols of bad luck and impending doom. Horror films tap directly into this ancient superstition. When a cat shows up in a horror movie, it's almost never just a cat. It arrives on screen carrying all that symbolic baggage of witchcraft, the supernatural, and of course, the scary unknown. It's a silent observer, a creature that seems to exist in our world, and a spiritual one at the same time. Its calm, unblinking stare can feel downright judgmental, like it knows all the dark secrets the human characters are trying to hide. Think about Stephen King's movie Pet Sematary. Winston Churchill the cat isn't just there for a couple of cheap jump scares. After he's brought back to life, his very presence just feels wrong. He's the first real sign that the laws of nature have been shattered. He represents the corruption of everything safe and domestic. A cherished family pet that has been twisted into a mangled, malevolent shell of his old self. He is a walking, purring embodiment of the movie's terrifying theme best quoted by Judd Crandall that sometimes dead is better. Even when they aren't supernatural, movie cats are often shown to be untrustworthy. They're aloof, self-serving, and disloyal, which is in direct contrast to the heroic man's best friend trope we often see with dogs. In the movie Alien, Jonesy the cat is accidentally responsible for Brett's death when he leads him right into the creature's path. The cat isn't evil, but his powerful survival instincts make him an unpredictable and dangerous element in a crisis. Through decades of cinematic conditioning, Hollywood has successfully weaponized the common house cat. By using them over and over as the delivery system for easy frights and as sinister symbols of horror films, directors have given fuel to old superstitions. They've literally trained us to feel a jolt of distrust whenever a cat slinks into the frame. The trope is now so ingrained in our film vocabulary that it's been parodied endlessly in movies like Scary Movie 2 and shows like Community. But even when we're making fun of it, the trope still works. Directors know that even if you see it coming a mile away, a perfectly timed cat scare can still make you jump. It's a true testament to the raw power of that primal startle reflex. It's a cheap trick for sure, but it's one that works every single time, hijacking our nervous system for a quick hit of manufactured terror. Pure genius, wouldn't you say? So, the next time you're watching a horror flick and the tension begins to build, listen very closely. When that sudden hiss or startled meow makes you leap out of your seat, just remember that you're not simply reacting to a cheap scare. You are the latest subject in an 80-year cinematic experiment. From its accidental birth in Val Lewton's Cat People to its perfection in slashers and sci-fi movies, the cat scare has become more than just a trope. It's a masterful piece of psychological manipulation built on animal biology, cinematic rhythm, ancient myths, and superstition. It's a tool that has allowed filmmakers to control our heart rates and play with our expectations. And in the process, they've unfairly tarnished the reputation of one of our most cherished feline companions. Hollywood took an animal known for its quiet independence and turned it into a symbol of sneaky untrustworthiness. They took a feline and turned it into a firearm, costly movie magic. And the most brilliant part about this tactic? They did it so well that even when we know it's coming, it still gets us. Every single time. You have to chuckle at the genius behind it all. Which movie had the most memorable cat scare that made you jump out of your seat? Tell us in the comments below. Let us know about any horror movies we didn't mention that use this famous trope. Be sure to watch Why Are Black Dogs Always the Villains? Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.